Yeah.
I thought, Teresa, you were going.
That's what I thought.
Okay, Teresa, go. Okay.
Off to a great start. All right, are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, welcome everybody to episode 4 of Current Status. It is December 4th, and we have a really great show for you this evening. My name is Teresa Miller, and you can find me on Twitter at 24/7 IT Connect.
I'm Exchange Goddess, Pumla Schmidt, and you can find me on Twitter at Exchange Goddess.
And I'm Melissa Palmer. You can find.
That's Melissa's crappy hotel Wi-Fi.
Excellent.
Yep.
Oh well. And
so we may have lost her.
Yes. We should probably
All right.
I apologize in advance.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I lose all of y'all at the same time? How is this possible?
We should probably let everybody know that we are on location at 2 different spots today. So our Wi-Fi is crappy. I'm actually using a hotspot off my phone, connected to my MacBook. So if I drop off, I apologize. And Melissa's at the hotel.
Is that your network admin behind you?
Something like that.
or is that where the live with a studio audience thing comes?
That's the live studio audience.
Okay, good, just checking.
That is Jane Fish from Razor Technology. I'm actually at their party right now, so.
Well, you're a hard worker. You go to a party and do a broadcast. I'm pretty impressed.
All right, do we have Missy back?
I think Melissa's I'm back. Can you guys see me and hear me?
Yes.
So, as Agent P mentioned, I'm on location in Orlando, Florida. I'm here for the Orion launch on a Delta IV Heavy. Unfortunately, this morning it didn't go as planned, and I've also been up since 3 a.m., so I apologize for any punchiness or just crazy things that might come out of my mouth tonight. I don't know if everybody's been following it, but Orion is NASA's next crew exploration vehicle, aimed at deep space missions and landing on asteroids and fun things like that. And I was watching the launch from an area, or attempting to watch the launch from an area that a bunch of people usually gather at for shuttle launches, a bunch of ham radio operators, a bunch of people taking pictures. We all had a really great time, even though the launch didn't go off, and we're hoping to see it tomorrow.
Did you see the boat?
No, I didn't see the boat. So the boat. There was a boat in the no-fly zone right before the launch, so they froze it at like T-3 something. And when they freeze after 4 minutes, they have to recycle the launch. So they had to recycle the launch because of the boat, and then it was too windy. And then they went again, and it was too windy a third time, and they had to recycle, and then they started having valve problems. So if it wasn't for this stupid boat, which I hope has been impounded, and this person has been made a laughingstock of whatever and feels really bad because we all didn't get to see the launch today. So hopefully we try again tomorrow, but it's the boat's fault.
Well, speaking of, I guess, flying, our guest tonight is Paul Robichaux, Exchange Rockstar MVP. Paul, do you want to kind of give a brief history of yourself, a little bio, or do we want to just, dive deep into Exchange on NFS?
You're not going to let that go, are you? So I'm Paul Robichaux. Since everybody else has introduced themselves with their Twitter handle, you can find me at Paul Robichaux, assuming you can spell Robichaux, which is hard for some people. I've been an Exchange MVP for 11 years now. I've been working with Exchange since Exchange 4.0. After I spent some time as a developer and author and consultant, so I've had a little bit of variety. It was interesting when Missy was talking about Orion. I'm based in Huntsville.
Oh, cool.
Huntsville owns all the launch vehicle activities, and that Delta IV Heavy that it's going to be launched on is built maybe 10 or 15 miles from here at the ULA plant in Decatur, Alabama. So it's a huge story here in Alabama, which, Alabama, right? But pretty excited to see what happens with the launch tomorrow.
No boats.
Hopefully no boats and hopefully no
I personally think if they put up a no boat zone, if your boat's in it, I don't think NASA ought to have to hold the launch for that. I think it's your responsibility not to get hit on the head.
Well, it's funny. So last month, I don't know if you saw the Antares rocket kind of blow up, but they had scrubbed the day before because of a boat. They scrubbed. They launched the next day and whatever. So everybody's like, oh, good thing they canceled because of that boat. Boats, people. Why? You know there's a launch coming. Why are you going to go for a cruise? Come on.
Darwin Award waiting to happen.
Yes.
They want to get a good view of the rocket launch. That's why.
Well, you can go up to a certain point. I think usually it's like I don't know, for the shuttle it used to be a 7-mile radius they would block off on the water. But yeah, you can go right up to that 7-mile radius and get a great show. That's what I did for the last rocket launch. I was right on the edge, but we weren't in the no-go zone because then launches don't happen.
That's really cool that you're getting this opportunity. I was down there years ago and missed the rocket launch by like a week.
No.
So didn't plan my trip very well, I guess.
Well, I came down yesterday.
I did get to see the launch pad, though.
That's cool. I came down yesterday with justice in mind. I'm staying through Monday thinking, okay, I always go down right the day before the launch in case something happens. Hopefully I'm staying long enough that I get to see it. Because it's actually hopefully my third rocket launch I'm going to see.
Very cool.
Cool.
Sorry, all the maneuvering in the background. I had like 20% left on my laptop. So we didn't want to have an outage.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So, Paul, what are your thoughts on Office 365, Exchange on-prem, and all that hearsay that, us Exchange admins are going to die away?
So that's a really interesting question because what I think a lot of people lose sight of is something very simple. Microsoft is in business to make money. If they can make more money selling Office 365 than on-prem, that's what they're going to do. If they continue to make money selling on-prem software, that's what they're going to do. I think it's pretty clear that there are elements inside Microsoft that would very much like to pretend like they can only make money by selling cloud services. But there are enough customers that are asking questions like, hey, when are we going to get another on-prem version of Exchange? Or, hey, what about this SharePoint deployment we just did? When is the next version of SharePoint coming? I think they see the handwriting on the wall, so I'm not worried that on-prem is going to vanish. But I do think Microsoft is making it very clear that the minute they don't feel like the money that comes in for building on-prem versions, the minute that is less than the money that, more than, might as well just start that whole train of thought over. The minute that they don't feel like they're making enough money with on-prem products to cover what it costs to deploy and support and engineer them, at that point I would expect them to say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. In terms of what that means for admins, it means that the workload shifts, right? I mean, if you spend any time working with Office 365, you know that there's still a lot of administrative work that takes place. There's message hygiene, there's user management. There's an initial little bit of migration work that has to happen, although that's not an ongoing thing. But even after you get migrated to the cloud, you still have many of the same kinds of outages and troubleshooting issues that you have at any other time. You still have file and print. You have the additional, what's the word I'm looking for? The additional overhead or the additional complexity of having a hybrid environment that you have to manage. That requires a slightly different skill set than just pure on-prem. So I don't think admin opportunities are going away. I just think that they're changing and maybe they're moving a little further up the tree so that whereas before you could get by with basic knowledge of just basic day-to-day user management type stuff in Exchange, if you want to still be gainfully employed working with Exchange or working with Link in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're probably going to need to be up the team a little bit and be better at troubleshooting, better at integrating with the service, understand the service processes and how to get the most out of them. So still work, just of a different kind.
I think I would kind of agree with you on that. I think with Office 365, you become more application-centric versus server-centric. As an Exchange admin before, I'd have to worry about the database. But with Office 365, there's no databases to worry about. So you're administering more of the mail administration portion versus, okay, I got to make sure I have enough space in my runs. And, it's less server administration.
Yes.
So I see your point, but, it depends on the company, too. Because some companies, a lot of the functions that you're talking about really goes towards the text or maybe help desk. or a tier 2 type of team versus your senior level engineers. Like myself, for instance, where if I was in a company that had Office 365, a lot of the functions that are in Office 365, I really wouldn't handle anymore. I'd offload that off to like a tier 1 or tier 2. Tier 3, which is what I would handle, I really don't have a job anymore. I would have to focus on something else. So I hear what you're saying, but I still, I think it depends on the company that you're with. You may end up, your job may end up shifting to a different type of, field.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think also, if you asked almost anybody except Perry Clark 10 years ago whether Exchange would have a huge cloud presence in 2014, I think they would have said no. So I think a lot of times we get wrapped around wanting to know what the IT landscape is going to look like in 5 or 10 years without an appreciation of how different it was 5 or 10 years ago from what we have today. I think there are probably some trends that have not emerged yet that are going to change things in ways maybe we don't anticipate. And so, I definitely see, and I'm sure you've all seen people who have come into IT through different paths, right? You've got recycled mainframe people, you've got people who came up from like desktop support and tier 1 help desk who have moved up into higher level server admin. They're still going to have those paths for escalation, right? I mean, the need for on-prem IT is not going to go away as long as you have a premises to have it on. You're always going to have end-user support, always going to have some kind of capability in your own data center that's going to have to be managed and controlled and maintained.
So what do you think about, doesn't the organization, the type of organization, the size of the organization, that's all a factor here from what I've been seeing. So like what Pumala was explaining, the smaller organization that might do all cloud, they would appreciate not having to have probably the tier 3 on site to do that work. But then I think you mentioned the hybrid situation. So that's a little bit more complex, where aspects of Office 365 or your Exchange environment would go into the cloud, and some of it would stay on-prem, keeping that tier 3 aspect very strong and present in that organization. And then there are some organizations I can imagine that just won't ever do it with the outages that we're seeing. I think some will stay away. Some of them just won't do it for the security. So it depends, doesn't it?
It does. I think my employer, Summit 7, commercial plug, is probably typical in some ways. We're a fairly small company. We've got about 30 employees. And we're all cloud-based. All of our services are all Office 365. We don't have an on-prem AD. We don't have any on-prem file and print. Everything that we do is cloud-based. But there's still times when we have to escalate a problem that we have with on-prem network connectivity, or with mail flow, or with message hygiene catching messages that it shouldn't. There's still support cases that we have to resolve, even though we don't have any conventional on-prem infrastructure other than our hypervisor environments. And I think that's going to be true for everybody that moves to the cloud. When Exchange 2007 was in beta at the MVP Summit in 2006, 2 folks who were not MVPs anymore, and that's the only reason I'm not going to tell you their names, just because I didn't ask them first, but they got up in front of Terry Meyerson, who was running the Exchange team at the time. They said, look, it's obvious what you guys are doing. You're obviously trying to engineer a product that small businesses will not use. It's too complicated. There are too many knobs and levers, and it has too many functions that are not appropriate for my small customers. So obviously you guys are trying to push them off to something else. Well, at the time there was nothing else to push them onto except Lotus Notes or the very short ill-fated Exchange Express product. But I think there's some truth to that. Microsoft would love it if all of their under 500 seat customers woke up tomorrow morning and said, Office 365, that's what we want. I think that would be a huge net savings for Microsoft in terms of their support costs for those customers, because, and I don't have any data to back this up, this is just anecdotal from talking to support folks, but those organizations generate support calls, but they don't generate the revenue that a Boeing does or a Ford does. I mean, the smaller companies, they don't buy premier support, they don't have TAMs, they're not spending the same amount of money on support that big customers are. But they're still generating support calls that Microsoft has to staff up CSS in Las Colinas and Charlotte, the other places where they've got customer support operations. So if all those people would move that support burden over to Office 365, I think Microsoft would be really happy about that. But then Teresa, as you said, there's always going to be companies that just don't want to move.
Do you guys foresee maybe Microsoft providing any sort of incentives to these smaller organizations to get them to make the move?
Oh yeah, there are lots of them. There are incentives for the companies, or for the customers themselves, both financial and functional. There are many, many, many incentives for partners, and what we used to call LARs, or large account resellers. I think they have a new name now. But there are a lot of incentives for those folks to try to migrate smaller customers to the cloud. Microsoft has been pushing that very aggressively. And I think they're going to keep doing it.
You could definitely feel it if you're on the VAR side. They're definitely pushing it. Another question that some of the Twitter followers have had is, Paul, what is your feelings, your takes on Exchange on the NFS? That's a very, very hot topic. So we want to hear it from the rock star himself. How does he feel about Exchange on NFS?
Well, I don't really have a feeling about NFS because NFS is primarily a network storage technology, and most Exchange implementations don't use network storage. If anything, they may use iSCSI. But at the end of the day, my position on it's very simple, and it's boring. It's certainly not nuanced. Microsoft says it's not supported for use with Exchange, so I don't recommend it. I recommend when I've had customers mention it to me, or people mention it to me, and that's always my take on it. Whether or not it works, I hate to say it's irrelevant, but it is. Microsoft doesn't support it. And I go to great lengths never to recommend unsupported configurations to my customer, not because they won't work, not because they don't have advantages or benefits, but because Microsoft, when they say something is unsupported, that has a very specific meaning in their world. It means either we have not tested this, so we don't know if it works or not. We have tested it, and we know that it does not work. It's one of those two things. So as Microsoft, Jeff Meliff and his team have said multiple times, there are some specific aspects of NFS performance on some systems, not all, that mean that Exchange cannot guarantee the performance that it expects to see. That doesn't mean that NFS can never be used with Exchange, but when you couple the fact that there are, if I say flaws, that sounds bad, there are reasons why the Exchange team will not extend that supportability boundary to NFS, and you couple that with the fact that relatively few customers are asking Microsoft to add that support, they're making what I think is a very rational decision. They're saying, okay, it will cost us X to certify the product on these different NFS offerings.
Well, what about SMB3? Because according to the documentation, if it's on SMB3 and Hyper-V, it is supported, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. Because I believe it's supported on SMB3.
So is there a question buried in that, or?
I guess some would say that SMB3 is almost the same as NFS. What's the without getting into the technical details between the two, what's the difference?
So, and without pretending that in any way I'm speaking for Microsoft or speaking ex cathedra, if you will, if they were the same, and Microsoft said they were the same, I hate to say it because it sounds bad, but you guys have all heard the
dead horse
saying, right? God said it, and I believe it, and that settles it. Microsoft has said it's not supported. You can argue about whether they should support it or not. I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But the fact is, because they've said it's not supported, even if NFS were SMB3 with one different bit at the protocol header, at the end of the day, if I call Microsoft and say, hey, I've got databases dismounting, or hey, I've got this odd problem and I'm troubleshooting it, if they don't support the storage configuration I'm using, it doesn't matter whether, and I'm not picking on NFS, if I had an Exchange DAG that was built with a redundant array of iPod shuffles, and I call Microsoft, they're going to say, gosh, I'm sorry, that's not supported. I can't help you with that.
SOL.
My business is telling customers how to do stuff that will keep them supported, keep their environment healthy. And so if Microsoft isn't willing to support it, then I can't recommend it.
Fair enough. Definitely fair enough. Do we want to talk about some of the topics that are trending this week? ladies,
Sure.
gentlemen? I think we have
Yeah.
isn't there like a Santa app out there? Teresa, I think you were pointing that out to us.
Yeah, so this week there's a social Santa app. It's more of a web-based application that was released. So if you are interested in finding out if you make the naughty list or the nice list via Twitter, it integrates with Twitter, and you can find that out. So, Paul, where do you think you sit on that list?
Well, it's
I'm
hard
on
to say.
the- I'm on the naughty list.
I have certainly had my moments this year, so I'm nervous about that, to be frank.
So
I think I'm like
you're-
everybody else. You know, December is my chance to try to climb back up to the margin, to the boundary line between naughty and nice.
Is there like a medium list? I might be on the medium list. I'm probably close to the
Yeah.
naughty.
I was
I don't
actually
know
on
I
the
don't know
good
that
list,
Santa rolls with the
surprisingly.
medium list.
Did you run it?
I did. I
Missy?
ran it, and it seemed like it was looking for how many times you had sweared on Twitter was one of the things I was looking for.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It only found one for me, so I was, I think, 4% good or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hell.
So if I can swing back for 1 second, I noticed that one of our Twitter folks said something that I think deserves an answer. He said, either Microsoft hasn't tested Exchange on NFS or they haven't, it doesn't work. I'd like to know why either way. So I'll tell you straight up, I don't know whether they've tested it or not. My belief is that they probably have not, and if they haven't, the reason is because those tests cost money. You know, Microsoft has a finite number of testers, and I think you could make a pretty good argument that they need to allocate their test resources very carefully to make sure they're testing the things that customers are actually doing. So I know Tony Redmond has said this many times, and there have been a lot of pushback from the NFS community. But if you believe NFS for Exchange should be supported, the way to make that known is to tell your Microsoft account reps, tell the people who sell you the software, tell your TAM, go find Jeff Miloff at Exchange Connections or Ignite, and tell them, hey Jeff, you know, I am a customer. I have 100 seats or 1,000 seats or 100,000 seats. I would like to be able to use Exchange on NFS. Because the only way Microsoft is going to rebalance how they spend those test dollars and spend some of them on testing NFS to see whether they can make it supportable is going to be if customers demand it. I can tell you that's exactly what happened with the ability to have file share witness machines on Windows Azure. Customers said, oh, you mean with Azure, with this cloud thing, I could put a file server in the cloud and have an instant cloud-based third DR site. And the Exchange guys said, well, we don't know if that'll work. Customers started waving money at the Azure and Exchange teams and saying, dude, if you can get that to work, I will buy it right now. That's how Microsoft gets incented to do things. So if you want them to support it on NFS, money talks.
There you have it, folks. Money talks.
Yeah, newsflash.
I wish I had money flying around right now. I'd like wave it around, you know. Money
Can you
talks,
make it
guys.
rain? You know? Maybe not.
And I think, Paul, you officially made the nice list you made up for the rest of the year by answering that Twitter question.
Sweet.
I'm still like upset though because I'm not sure. A lot of people actually don't know, but Paul and I, well, my first speaking engagement, I had to go against Paul Robichaux, and
Well, you make it sound like we were arm wrestling. I mean, come on.
it was though. The first
It wasn't competitive.
I had to go up against you. Seriously, it was tough. So he tells me just walk into the session and go peace out, bitches, and drop the mic. And I'm like, seriously?
I did say that.
Yeah.
But you didn't do it, did you?
I did not say that though.
All right, well, see?
She didn't, and I was a witness.
Yeah.
That advice was worth what you paid for it.
Yeah,
You know?
because he wanted more people at his session. I think we had like a good split though. But that was good. That was a good advice from Paul. There was personal gain there though.
Well, let me know next time you're speaking somewhere, and I'll see if I can give you better advice. How about that?
I think it was a good session because I think half the people were like, do I go see her? Do I go see him? But it was definitely good advice, and I'll never forget. So thank you. And I did not say peace out, bitches, because I think Jake and George probably would have flipped out.
Yeah, that might have been a little tough for him to take.
Did you at least actually drop the mic and walk off the stage or no?
I did not drop the mic. No, I didn't. I think I was too nervous to drop the mic.
Do you know how much those event management companies charge to rent mics? Man, if I dropped the mic and broke it, I'd probably still be paying for it. So, yeah, don't follow that part of the advice.
Yeah, usually just drop the mic. Peace out.
Yeah, set the mic down gently and then say peace out. Try that.
Gently place the microphone on the floor and then say peace out.
Yeah, good idea.
Maybe next time that I get to speak again, I'll say that, and I'll blame it on you now.
Well, I'm hoping that all three of you are going to be speaking at Ignite, right? I mean, one of the key features of Ignite that I think is long overdue is that Microsoft is going to put out a call for topics and then let attendees vote in some fashion. They haven't said how, but they're going to let attendees vote on what they want to hear. So I really like that. I know VMworld has been doing that for a while.
Is that a hint, Paul?
I'm sorry?
I think that was like
one.
Yeah, I think that was a heavy. Maybe we could do a live show from Ignite. I'm sorry, formerly Tech Ed.
No, it's still Tech Ed. Different name, still Tech Ed.
Yeah. I still call it Tech Ed.
Now watch the angry tweets start rolling.
We might do a current status from Tech Ed. Ignite.
I think that would be fun. Tony and I had a good time doing our Exchange Exposed podcast from Exchange Connections, and the UC architects always draw a crowd when they do a live event from Link Conference or Exchange Connections or wherever they happen to be. So I think that would definitely be something for y'all to look into.
Yeah, we might. I guess we still have some time. Let's talk about some hobbies. You're actually a pilot, so
I am.
You're the official Mac Airlines, where you fly everybody that goes to Mac conferences. Is that still kind of...
Michel Derouille, who is one of the Exchange MVPs, is legendary for his skill with Photoshop. So he took a picture of my plane and he photoshopped the Yammer logo on the side of it, and photoshopped Yam Air 1 onto the tape.
Nice.
Well, you actually said Yammer without freaking out. Are you okay?
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I forgot every time that's said.
That's right. You're supposed to
drink.
It's
just Diet Coke, but still, it's the principle.
Do we need to resuscitate you because you said Yammer?
So, here's the funny thing. I've been working with the Clutter feature, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about how Microsoft is giving incentives to people to use the cloud. Yeah. Clutter it's got the potential to be a fantastic feature. Right now, Microsoft is still working through, if you think of Clutter as like a panel from a 50s sci-fi movie, it's got a million knobs on it that they can tweak to tune its efficiency. And it works better for some people than others because everybody gets a different mix of email. I happen to get a lot of junk. I get marketing newsletters and announcements and press releases and all kinds of stuff like that. And so Clutter is still figuring out what is good mail and what's bad mail. It's learning how to distinguish between the two. And I will say it's done a really, really good job. I have yet to have a false positive. So it has never taken the legitimate mail and marked it as clutter. And I appreciate that. But I think that, as time goes on, those kinds of mediated technologies are really going to come in handy. We're going to see more and more of that kind of stuff applied in Exchange. But one of the things that we've noticed is that on my individual mailbox, no matter what I do, I cannot make Clutter take Yammer notifications and treat them as clutter. It just won't.
It's almost
funny.
There's some else in the Yammer Control Center saying, make Paul see every one of these notifications. Because other MVPs and other end users I've talked to have not had that problem.
Just disable notifications. I disable all Yammer notifications. I apologize for Jay from Razor Technology gave me a glass of wine because he said it just didn't feel right without the glass of wine. So thank you, Razor, for my.
So there you have it.
Yeah, and I didn't actually have wine here, so I feel privileged now that they actually.
Oh. Because
I was
special for you.
Fancy.
Yeah, so I
do up and drinking wine. You got two up on the rest of us.
Vodka, cranberry, and red wine. I don't know what kind of wine this is, but it's good wine.
Yammer.
Yeah, Yammer.
Yammer Vineyards.
All right, so we can't end our podcast with Yammer.
Oh no, we can't.
So
kind of sorry I brought it up.
It's just about time to wrap up. So
real quick, right now.
Yeah, real quick, Microsoft purchased a company this week. I'm not sure I'm going to say it correctly. It was like Accompli or Accompli.
Accompli.
To deal with some of the mobile aspects of email. And I was curious what your thoughts were on that before we wrap up here.
So there are about 10 really different interesting things about what Microsoft is doing in mobile. I mean, first of all, you've got this whole notion. They shipped an OA client for iOS and for Android, but they didn't ship one for Windows Phone. So that's interesting, but we can debate why that is and talk about the conspiracy theories that underlie it. But the fact is they shipped this OA for devices because if you use the built-in clients on iOS or Android, you miss out on a lot of the functionality that makes mobile Exchange really great. So the Complete guys said, well, okay, OA for devices does some interesting and useful stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff that we would like to have in an email client that Exchange doesn't support. We need the client to support it. So they're doing the same thing that Microsoft is doing with OA for devices. They're just doing it differently. They're building a purpose-built client that encapsulates sort of what a Complete thinks a good, functional, intelligent mobile client should look like. That's different from what Microsoft thinks it looks like based on what's in OA for devices. So one question I have is, okay, you've got, and I don't even want to say chocolate and peanut butter. You've got maybe Legos and Mega Blocks, or you've got two things that are trying to achieve the same object but may not necessarily plug in together. How are they going to resolve that? What does that mean in terms of their mobile device management strategy? They're baking MDM into 365 as yet another reason to get people to say, well, let's see, if I move to the cloud, then I don't have to buy a separate MDM solution. I can just use the one that's built in. So if they do that, what does that mean about what they do on the mobile mail and communications client side? Can they absorb a Compli quickly so that we're not waiting another year and a half to get an integrated Compli client based on the technology they bought? And just a lot of questions. It's an interesting move, and I think that the Compli product has got some pretty nifty guts to it, but we'll have to wait and see what Microsoft does with it first.
I would agree. I think it's a smart move. Smart move by Microsoft, definitely.
It looked that way because it handles the data differently. It was like it uses ActiveSync, but it doesn't because it's like, I don't know, scrub's probably not the right word, but it deals with the data differently in the background.
Right.
So,
see, Microsoft has the advantage for something like Clutter. They can pull the data right out of your mailbox and do machine learning or do filtering or do mediation on it and then serve you a view of what's already in the mailbox. A Complete can't do that because their code doesn't run on Microsoft servers, so they use ActiveSync to pull that data out of Exchange, and then they process it and they expose that processed view to you. It's almost like buying IKEA furniture. You can buy it from the store and put it together yourself, or I know up the road in Nashville from where I live, because there are no IKEA stores nearby, there's a store in Nashville that resells IKEA stuff. So you order what you want, and 2 or 3 times a week they drive a truck to Atlanta and they pick up like everybody's IKEA furniture and they take it back to Nashville. And if you want them to, they will put it together for you and deliver it to your house. So if you think what a Compli is doing, it's not dissimilar. Microsoft will sell you email, or you can buy better filtered, smarter email from a Compli, but that means that they've got to take that email and get the little wrenches and the Swedish instructions and do the work for you.
cool.
Wow.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I was looking at the time there. I was like,
Yeah.
we're having fun, and I just didn't realize the time is flying. It's like, wow, it's 10:48. Wow.
Yeah, so we should probably close out the show. So this was Current Status, Episode 4. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Paul, for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I love being here.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
will be back next week.
Thank you, everybody, for bearing with our technical difficulties.
Yes, thank you for dealing with my not talking and texting Teresa and Agent P because my internet not so good and just freezing on me
And
constantly.
we are sorry, Josh Atwell, that we sent the wrong link. Okay.
That was my fault, Josh. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
we
gonna get
still
up
love
to
you,
you.
Josh. Yeah, we just blame it on the the Benadryl or the technical difficulties, but we still love you. Yes, don't hate us.
All
And
right.
of course, we love you, Paul. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great holiday.
Have a great night.
Thanks,
Oh,
everybody. Have a great night.
So.